Hello everyone, it's Mariners Fanatic back in the YouTube video, and in this video I'm going to be discussing my season predictions along with records and who's going to win the division and that sort of thing. I'll give a brief synopsis of each team's offseason from my point of view, as well as where I think each team is going. Playoff predictions and maybe some awards predictions will be in a different video. This one's going to be a long one as it is, talking about all 30 teams. So expect that one coming soon. Also, I will be doing a Mariners season preview right before opening day. That'll be either released on opening day or the day before, depending on when I can finish it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the analysis for each team. Starting off with our AL West. In first place, again, I have the Houston Astros, 94-68. The Mariners in second at 91-71. The Angels in third at 85-77. The Rangers in fourth at 75-87. The A's at 63-99 in fifth place. I'll start from the bottom, go to the top. Starting off talking about the A's, they had a good offseason, I guess you could say, with the moves they made. They took a look around them at the rest of the AL West and decided we didn't have it last year, so let's tear it all down, and I definitely agree with that decision. They got some good players back in some of the trades they've made so far. We'll see if they get rid of Montas and Manaea as well, or anybody else potentially, but they're definitely looking to hold on to their young, controllable players like Tony Kemp, and I think Sean Murphy will stick around too. If they don't trade Montas and Manaea right now, they'll definitely trade them at the deadline, as there's no reason to keep Manaea. Montas, you may see him stick around, but he could be dealt as well. But the bottom line is it's going to be a rebuilding year for the Oakland A's. They have some interesting young players, especially guys like Kevin Smith and Christian Pache, who came over in the trades for Olsen and Chapman. But overall, it's going to be a rough season for Oakland and their fans. Hopefully, they can get that new stadium built. Moving on to the Texas Rangers. Like I said on there, all offense, no pitching. This team is a borderline 500 team with its offense alone, but when John Gray is your number one starting pitcher, you have some issues. Marcus Semien and Corey Seager are a great middle infield duo offensively. Defensively, we'll see if they can live up to the hype. In general, the lineup is solid with Adolis, Garcia, Nate Lowe, and others in that lineup, but right now I don't see them as much more than that. They need guys like AJ Alexy and Taylor Hearn to step up and prove themselves, and in a year or two, maybe Jack Leiter's on the squad. This year is just not their year, but they're trending in the right direction. Moving on to the Angels, I have them in third. Last year I had them in second, and it seems like every year they disappoint. I mean, as a Mariners fan, I don't want them to be better than us, but objectively, they probably should be. However, their pitching is really not that strong in my opinion. Shohei needs to be taking the ball every fifth day, and so far in his career, he just hasn't been healthy enough to do that. And when he's your best starter, that hurts as far as the rotation goes. Syndergaard and Lorenzen have been added, but ultimately, Syndergaard has to prove himself, and then Lorenzen has mostly been a relief pitcher in his career. I know he's started some games, but ultimately, this is a bit of a new role for him to be a full-time starter. Patrick Sandoval is really good. He's going to have another good season. But in general, the rotation is rather thin behind those top guys. And I just don't know if it's going to be enough for them to jump forward into second or first place in our division. Obviously, the offense is great, but if guys like Trout and Rendon can't stay healthy again like last year, they're going to be in the same spot they were last season. Moving on to the Seattle Mariners, my team. I'll talk more in depth about them in that season preview video I have planned, but just a brief synopsis. The rotation is solid. Ray at the top, he's going to be great for us. Flexen and Marco will be consistent. They're not going to be all-stars or Cy Young contenders, but they're solid pitchers. I think Logan Gilbert's going to take a step forward and jump into that number 2 spot in the rotation. And right now, unless we make another move before the season starts, it's looking like Matt Brash is our number 5, which makes me really excited because I've been high on him for about a year and a half now, and I'm excited to see what he can do. And then obviously we've got guys like George Kirby and Levi Stout behind him that could contribute throughout the season. The offense is greatly improved over last year with the additions of Winker and Suarez and Adam Frazier. I don't think our lineup competes with the Angels and the Astros at full strength. So there is definitely still some work to be done there. As the season goes along, we'll see how it all plays out. But I'm very excited for this club. I'm a little nervous about having some people pick us to win the division, as I just want us to make the playoffs first. But we'll see what happens. That's hence why I have the can we live up to the expectations of everyone? Obviously, we're on the rise, but can we take that and run with it? Finally, talking about the Houston Astros. I have them at 94 and 68. They will regress a little bit. Obviously, they lost Correa, they lost Greinke, and some other guys, and they really didn't add too many players over the offseason. However, just in general, their team is already good. And they're going to be replacing Correa with their number one prospect in Jeremy Pena. Kyle Tucker is going to continue to develop and could be an MVP candidate. You still have Altuve, Bregman, Alvarez, Gurriel, Brantley. I mean, the team is it's still good. They added back Verlander. We'll see how he is at his advanced age, but you can see what Scherzer does, and I don't think Verlander is going to be too bad. The rotation with Framber Valdez, Odorizzi, Urquidy, and Garcia is still very solid, and then the bullpen is still very good as well. The only addition they made there was adding Hector Neris. So the Astros, in my opinion, are still the favorites to win the division, but who knows? Things could change if the Angels are healthy and their pitching figures it out, or if the Mariners really run for it and Julio is an all-star, Kelenich's an all-star, and everything just goes right. The West is very much up for grabs, but I still think the Astros win the division. Moving on to the American League Central. I have the White Sox winning the division again at 95 and 67. The Twins in second place at 88 and 74. The Tigers in third, 82 and 80. The Guardians in fourth at 76 and 86. And the Royals in fifth at 67 and 95. Starting from the bottom, going to the top, talking about the Royals, they have some interesting players, right? I mean, they've got Carlos Santana. They have Salvador Perez, Andrew Benintendi, pretty much the same squad as last year. And they could be potentially adding the top prospect in baseball, Bobby Witt Jr. But I just don't know about this team. Besides offense, the pitching staff is not great. I mean, they added Greinke, and you've got Brady Singer and some others. But Brady Singer was okay last year. And the rest of the rotation is kind of average or below average, in my opinion. I'm not really excited about what the Royals have going on right now. I think they're really just waiting for their younger guys to develop. And of course, Adalberto Mondesi has to stay healthy. That dude is an amazing player, but he basically didn't play at all last year. So they need him back. And then the bullpen is okay, but it's not a top bullpen by any means. So we'll see how they do. I still have them finishing in last. They'll probably win more games than 67, but that's just kind of where I have them right now. Talking about the Cleveland Guardians, they did absolutely nothing this offseason. They made a couple minor trades and a couple minor free agent acquisitions, but they really didn't do anything. Obviously, their pitching rotation is still solid. You've got Shane Bieber, Cal Quantrill, Zach Plesac, Aaron Savale, and others, but besides their rotation, there's not a whole lot to be excited about with this team. Obviously, you've got Jose Ramirez still, and you've got some prospects coming up like Nolan Jones. But overall, I'm not real high on this team. I think that record could be even lower, but because of their pitching, that's kind of where I have them right now. But I truly think that the Guardians are trending downwards, and unless their ownership really takes control and commits to winning, they're going to keep trending downward, in my opinion. On to the Detroit Tigers at 82 and 80. They're definitely on the come up, but I don't think they're there yet. Yeah, they signed Javi Baez and Eduardo Rodriguez, but I don't think Eduardo Rodriguez is a guy you necessarily want as your number one starter. They've got Casey Mize and Tarek Skubal, which are very exciting young players, Matt Manning as well. But just in general, I don't think they're quite there yet. The rotation is not that deep. Spencer Turnbull who threw a no-hitter against us last year, was out with Tommy John. Don't know his timetable to return yet. Probably not even this season. And then Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson are not quite ready yet. They may make their appearances this year, but of course the first year in the bigs is not always a success. So I just don't think this year's their year. Next year, I could see them doing some great things, but I just don't see the Tigers as being there yet. Moving on to the Minnesota Twins. Now, I love what the Twins did this offseason. Getting Correa on a short-term deal, I think, was a great move on their part. Trading Donaldson to get Gio Urshela from the Yankees, I mean, that was a great move, in my opinion. Gary Sanchez, kind of a throw-in piece, whatever, not too. But I really, really like what the Twins did this offseason. They also got Sonny Gray from the Reds. I would say the weakest part of the Twins right now is their rotation. There's not enough depth, which could hold them back and prevent them from getting a wild card spot. They're definitely going to be a 500 ball club this year. They won't be where they were last year. But if they have guys like Joe Ryan and Bailey Ober continue to take steps forward in that rotation, the Twins could surprise some people this year. And that makes me excited, as the Twins are my second favorite team. So maybe it's a little bit of bias, but I think they'll bounce back. Next up, talking about the Chicago White Sox. It's really not a question for me of whether they're going to win the division or not. It's pretty much a runaway at this point, and maybe I'm jinxing them. I don't know. The bullpen is solid, and they added Kendall Graveman. The rotation is still good. The lineup, they didn't really have to do much there. This team is a playoff team already. The question for them is whether they're going to make a deep playoff run, as I have there up there on the graphic. They've been first-round exits the last 2 years, and they haven't really had any playoff success since the mid-2000s. So it's really their time to step it up and prove that they can compete with teams in the AL West and AL East. So that's the Central. Moving on to talk about the AL East. Got the Blue Jays 98-64, Rays 92-70, Red Sox 83-79, Yankees 81-81, and the Orioles at 64-98. Starting off with the Orioles, it's another development year, but they're on the right track. The last 2 years have been really rough, but this year is where I hope they take a step forward. They're not going to find themselves out of 5th place this year. That's maybe for next year. But hopefully Adley comes up this season, their top prospect, and some other guys like Ryan Mountcastle can keep producing at the plate. John Means is going to stick around, hopefully, for them and provide some much-needed leadership in the rotation. They're also moving the fences back in left field. We'll see how that ballpark dimensions favors or disfavors them one way or the other. But ultimately, it's another rebuild year for the Orioles, but they're heading in the right direction. In 4th place, I have the New York Yankees. Now, if any Yankees fans watch this, I'm sorry, but the Yankees are a 4th place team. Besides Garrett Cole and Aaron Judge, everybody else on this team is a question mark. Let's just take a look around the diamond. Anthony Rizzo, is he the same player as he was with the Cubs? I don't think so. Was okay his second half in New York, but he wasn't amazing. Let's take a look at second base. Is Gleyber Torres going to play second, or is he going to play short? Is he going to be consistent? Then you've got DJ LeMahieu. Is he going to play first or second or DH? What's he going to do? Are you going to get the LeMahieu from a couple years ago, or are you going to get him from last season where he wasn't as good? Third base, Donaldson. He's going to be great, but he's going to stay healthy. He hasn't really had a full season in a couple years. Taking a look at the outfield. Joey Gallo, great defense. Good hitter, but he did not hit well in New York once he came over from Texas last second half of the year. Center field, Aaron Hicks, and who else? I don't know. Right field, you got Judge, so that's not a question mark. But then you've got Stanton, who, when healthy, he's not a question mark, but that's the question. Is he going to be healthy? Then you look at the rotation. You got Cole at the top, and then you've got Montgomery. He's solid, but not, outstanding. Severino is amazing when healthy again. And then you got some other young guys coming back in the rotation. You've got Nestor Cortez. Was that a fluke or was that real? The bullpen is probably the really only thing about that team that's not a question. Like, if everything goes right, yeah, the Yankees could probably still win the division. I don't think things are going to go right for them. Like, I just don't. And that's why I have them as a fourth place team. I know I'm spending a lot of time talking about the Yankees, but I just had to get that off my chest. The Yankees are a fourth place team. Now talking about the Red Sox. They're not going to replicate what they did last year. They got hot at the right times. Sale came back at a perfect time for them at the end of the year, and now Sale is out again. We could very well see the same thing happen last year, where Sale comes back, and they're in a great spot at the end of the year and make the playoffs. But for me, I see this team as an offense-first team. I don't really believe in that rotation, especially with Sale out of it. Tanner Houck is amazing. Pavetta's decent. But overall, the rotation is not something I'm a fan of. Yeah, they got Trevor Story, but again, their offense was already fine, in my opinion. The bullpen, they made some upgrades there, but bullpens are fluid each year. So for every team, their bullpen could be better or worse. So I don't see those moves as being groundbreaking. Overall, I think the Red Sox are going to finish third. Talking about the Tampa Bay Rays in second place. The Rays are the Rays. Like, I don't even know how they won 100 games last year, but they did. They could do that again this year. But I'm going to go a little bit conservative and have them at 92 wins. Mainly because their pitching rotation is a little thin, and it's filled with a lot of young guys. Obviously, the Rays know what they're doing there, but it's not a guarantee that everything's going to go smoothly as it did last year for them. They made some good upgrades in the bullpen, although they did lose Colin McHugh. But overall, I think this Rays team is better than they were last year, but I also think they overperformed a little bit last year, so that's why I have them dropping down a little bit into second place. Talking about the Blue Jays, this team is a good team. They will win the division. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, whatever. But they're going to win the division, in my opinion. Great offense, well-rounded team. The only thing they're maybe missing is some power lefties in the lineup, but they have so many good right-handed hitters that you almost don't need as many lefties. So we'll see how that plays out. They'll be just fine, especially when you got a rotation of Gausman, Berrios, Alex Manoah, Hyunjin Ryu, and then now Kikuchi as your 5-starter. That's a pretty good rotation. The bullpen was good for them last year, and I think it'll be good for them again. Yet this year, I'm not too concerned about that. Really, the question for the Blue Jays is, it's still a tough AL East, so can they rise above? And I think they will. Moving on to the National League and the NL West. Looking at the Dodgers, got 105 and 57, the Giants at 93 and 69, the Padres at 84 and 78, the Rockies at 74 and 88, and the Diamondbacks at 68 and 94. Starting from the bottom to the top, looking at the Diamondbacks, last year was a rough year for them. Everything just went wrong. They're not going to be a 50-something win team like they were last year, but they're definitely in the midst of a bit of a rebuild. Don't expect much more than 70 wins from them. They just signed Ketel Marte to an extension, and they made some good moves in the offseason. They got Zach Davies, Keon Kela for the bullpen, and some other minor moves, but nothing for the long term besides signing Ketel. So they're definitely in another who's going to be here for the long run year where they kind of figure out those young guys that are going to stick with the club. You'll probably see David Peralta traded at the deadline. Some of those guys who are closer to the end of their time in Arizona will probably see their way out. Next up is the Rockies. The direction that this team is going is a little bit confusing. They're obviously trying to win a division, right? Everybody is. It seems like they've taken 2 steps forward and then 3 steps back, and then 1 step forward, 2 steps back with moves over the last couple years. The Arenado move was actually a good move. Austin Gomer is a good pitcher. I think he's going to have another solid season. They still have German Marquez. They signed Antonio Senzatella to an extension. The rotation's not too bad, but it's also Colorado. Things change. One pitcher can be good one year, and then the next year he's not, like Kyle Freeland. So it's kind of up in the air. The bullpen is always a question mark. They added Alex Colomé. We'll see how that goes. And then the big surprise was adding Chris Bryant. I think this was actually a pretty good move by the Rockies, and nobody really expected it. They have to start building around him within the next year or two if this move is going to be worth it. And that NL West is not getting any easier. So, where are the Rockies going? Not really sure, but I think they'll be a solid team. Looking at the Padres, I have it there on the graphic. Can they compete in this NL West? The rotation was great last year. The first half of the season, they looked like they were a surefire team to make the playoffs, and then it all absolutely fell apart in the second half. Everybody got hurt. Their rotation is back. I think it's going to be good like it was last year at the start. Snell, he's going to bounce back. But the lineup is a bit of a question. You got guys like Hosmer and Profar who have underperformed since they've been there. Will Myers is getting older, got a big contract. What are they going to do with that? And then Tatis, has gotten hurt a couple times. He's hurt right now. So what are the Padres going to do about that? There's a lot of question marks on the offensive side of things with the Padres. They have a lot of great players. I like their team, but I just don't necessarily believe in it. So we'll see what they can do. They're definitely going to be competitive, but I don't see them much more than third place right now. They could flip-flop with the Giants, depending on how things go, but for now, I have them in third. Talking about the Giants, they're not winning the division again this year. I severely underestimated them last year, but I'm not going to overestimate them like a lot of people are. Their offseason was fine. They added Jock Peterson. They re-signed Desclafani and Alex Wood. But they lost Kevin Gausman, they lost Bryant, and they lost Posey. Obviously, Bryant wasn't with them for a full season, but he still makes a difference. I think their team overperformed to an extent last year, and I don't see that happening again. Yes, they also added Carlos Rodon and Alex Cobb to the rotation, so I think their pitching is still going to be fine, especially with Logan Webb at the helm. And the bullpen will be okay, but I just don't think that their offense can really replicate what they did last year. Brandon Belt and Brandon Crawford, both starting to get into their mid-30s, and that lineup in general is an older lineup. So we'll see what the Giants can do. I still think they're a second-place team and will probably make the playoffs, but the age of that lineup concerns me, and the consistency of it concerns. Finally, talking about the Dodgers, I'm going to spend half a second on them, basically. It's World Series or bust for them. If they don't make the World Series, it is a massive disappointment. They added Freeman. They brought back Kershaw. Yes, they lost Scherzer, but he was only there for half the season anyways, and they were still a good team without him anyways. So the biggest question for the Dodgers is probably their pitching rotation. We still don't know what's going to happen with Bauer. Is he going to come back? Is he not? What's going on there? Whether you like the guy or not, he's a great pitcher, and he makes their team better from a performance standpoint. They still have a lot of depth in the rotation, but it's not quite as strong without Scherzer. And Kershaw is getting up there in age. Yeah, he's still good, but he's not as good as he was. So the Dodgers, they better make the World Series. If they don't, what are you doing? Like, you just signed Freddie Freeman, and that lineup is just insane. It's literally so good. And the bullpen is fine. They lost Kenley, but they still added some pieces and already have a solid bullpen as it is. So I'm not really too concerned about them. And yeah, that's the NL West. Moving on, talking about the NL Central. Got the Brewers at 90 and 72, the Cardinals at 86 and 76, the Cubs at 78 and 84, the Reds at 69 and 93, and the Pirates at 66 and 96. Starting from the bottom, we've got the Pittsburgh Pirates. Can they take a step forward this year? There's been rumors swirling that Brian Reynolds being talked in trades. Could he be traded within the next week? I don't know. If he is, then this team is a lot worse than 66 wins. But I'm taking a risk in saying that they will win 60 games, and they could even win 70, depending on how things go. They made a couple minor signings to bring guys in, but they didn't do a whole lot this offseason. They brought back Yoshi Satsugo. They brought in Daniel Vogelbach. But it's really about seeing who's going to stick. Is Cole Tucker, is he the answer? Or are they going to have to move on from him? Obviously, Brian Reynolds is good. He's going to stay, or will he be traded? So that's a question mark. You want to see more development from Ke'Bryan Hayes and Mitch Keller. And there's so many young guys that are coming up, like O'Neal Cruz, looking to make his next impact. They've got a guy named Diego Castillo, not related to our Diego Castillo. He's looking to make an impact. They've got some young guys, and they're heading in the right direction. But similar to the Orioles, they're just not there yet. So we'll see what they can do. Talking about the Cincinnati Reds. If this were a month ago, I'd probably have them finishing about 500, maybe second or third. I know what they're doing, but I also don't know what they're doing. They're trying to cut money. They don't want to spend money. But they got rid of half their roster that had them almost in the playoffs last year. Castellanos is gone. Obviously, they traded Winker and Suarez to us. They traded Sonny Gray. They let Wade Miley walk. They traded Amir Garrett. So many guys from that team are gone. And then they traded for Mike Minor from the Royals, which at the time I was like, what are they doing? But they're probably hoping he can have a good season and then trade him at the deadline. Same thing with Tommy Pham. Just a one-year signing. See if he can play well and then trade him at the deadline. The Reds are not going to be a good team. However, they do have a lot of young, intriguing players. Obviously, we traded them Jake Fraley, Justin Dunn, and Brandon Williamson. See what those guys do this year. Hunter Green is going to be making his debut this year. And they still have Luis Castillo and some other quality arms in the rotation, like Tyler Mahle. But the bullpen is not super strong. So, ultimately, I think the Reds are going to be a fourth-place team. Now, talking about the Chicago Cubs. They signed Seiya Suzuki and Marcus Stroman and had some other good moves. But I just don't think they're there yet. I think another year or two, they'll be back competing for the top of that division. But this year, I think it was just kind of the starting point. Similar to the Tigers, where they made some good moves, and they've got some young, intriguing pieces. But I don't see them challenging for a playoff spot or the division at this point. But it will be cool to see how Seiya Suzuki does, and Marcus Stroman. They've got some other interesting names, but overall, third-place team. Now looking at the St. Louis Cardinals. I have them in second mainly because of the rotation. The lineup is good. They didn't really lose anybody. Everybody seems to be healthy right now. So I'm not too worried about their lineup, but the rotation is a big question mark. Jack Flaherty's health has been an issue over the last couple of years. They brought back Wainwright and Molina kind of for a last hurrah type of thing, as well as Albert Pujols. So, you root for this team, but I just don't know. Miles Mikolas has had some injury and performance issues over the past couple years. They did bring in Steven Matz. He's going to be solid, but he's not like a top of the rotation guy in my opinion. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. And then you've got Dakota Hudson, but behind that, the rotation is pretty thin. The bullpen's good, but Jordan Hicks, he's kind of had a lost couple years last year, and then it sounds like Alex Reyes is going to be out. Their rotation and the bullpen are not as strong as they were last year. The Cardinals also overperformed a little bit last year, so we'll see how they do this year. You'll continue to see guys like Dylan Carlson develop, and of course you got Tyler O'Neill, Tommy Edman, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado. It's a pretty solid lineup, but overall, I'm just not sold on the Cardinals right now. They could win the division, but I just personally don't see it right now. Then finally, the Milwaukee Brewers. Pitching wins championships. Obviously, the Brewers, it's been a couple years since they've made the NLCS versus the Dodgers, but this team has the pitching alone to win the division. I mean, you got Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, Freddie Peralta. Top three is amazing. The bullpen, you got Hader, Williams, Sutter, and so many other good names in the pen. Pitching is going to carry the Brewers this season. The lineup is decent, but what really needs to happen is Christian Yelich to get back to form. If he gets back to form, there's no question that the Brewers are going to win the division. And I know one player can't make that much of a difference, but Yelich was an MVP a couple years ago. So he really can make that much of a difference when he's healthy and playing well. So we'll see how it goes for the Brewers, but I still have them at the top of the division. Final division, and I know this has been a long video. Thanks for sticking with me if you've been here through it all. We have the NL East. Atlanta Braves 96-66, the Mets 89-73, 87-75 for the Phillies, 77-85 for the Marlins, and 70-92 for the Nationals. Starting from the bottom, we've got the Nationals. They made some interesting moves this offseason, acquiring Nelson Cruz and bringing in some former Nationals in Doolittle and Clippard, but they didn't really do a whole lot, which it wasn't expected for them to make big moves this offseason. But probably the biggest weakness is the rotation. Patrick Corbin has kind of been in decline, and that contract is not looking strong that they made to him a couple years ago. But you also have some young, interesting guys in Josiah Gray and Eric Fetty, and possibly their top prospect, Cade Cavalli, coming up at some point during the season. We'll see if Anibal Sanchez can resurrect his career, but probably the biggest weakness for the Nationals is the rotation, because the lineup really isn't too bad. Obviously, you've got Soto, now you've got Cruz, and then Josh Bell in there. Keibert Ruiz looking to make an impact. Got Cesar Hernandez, another young guy in Lane Thomas. And then they still have Victor Robles, and some young, interesting catchers in Riley Adams. And another young, interesting catcher in Riley Adams. So this team is interesting, but I don't see them winning much more than 70 games. Moving on to the Marlins. Boy, I wish the Marlins would be good, but it seems that they just never are, somehow, even with how good some of these teams they've had are. I like their lineup a lot, actually. You got Chisholm, they signed Jorge Soler and Avisail Garcia, and then you've still got Jesus Aguilar, Brian Anderson, Garrett Cooper, and Miguel Rojas, and they added Stallings and Joey Wendell. So the offense on this team, although none of them are huge impact players, it's a good, decent-looking squad on the offensive side. And then they've always had pitching. They've got Alcantara, Pablo Lopez, Trevor Rogers. They added Luzardo from the A's last year. And they have other young starters. Sixto Sanchez is hurt right now, but he's on the come up once he gets back. The Marlins are a really interesting team, especially because the bullpen is not too bad either. But things just didn't really work out for them last year. And then Derek Jeter left the team and made some comments about how they didn't want to spend money, which to me is frustrating because some people trying to blame Jeter, for trading everybody and then leaving. But I don't know. I'm more thinking that there's an ownership issue. Won't get too deep into the weeds of that. But ultimately, I side with what Derek Jeter is saying. So we'll see what the Marlins can do. But I'm not expecting them to make the playoffs. Moving on to the Philadelphia Phillies. The lineup is amazing. They added Schwarber and Castellanos. They already have Harper and Real Muto, Didi Gregorius, Gene Segura, Rhys Hoskins. If Alec Bohm breaks out, he's good. Mickey Moniak, if he breaks out, just all around, the team on the offensive side of things is fine. The question has always been the pitching. They've got Aaron Nola at the helm, solid pitcher. And then, of course, you got Zach Wheeler. Cal Gibson came over from the Rangers in a trade last year. And then you've got Eflin and Ranger Suarez as well. The rotation's not bad. It's solid. But depth behind that's a little weak. It's more about the bullpen. The bullpen the last few years has been just a problem for the Phillies. For whatever reason, just hasn't worked out for them. They made some moves in the bullpen, bringing in Yuri's Familia and Brad Hand, but both those guys are 32, so we'll see how it works out with them. Looking at their bullpen, they don't seem to have a clear closer. Right now, Fangraphs has Corey Knebel as their closer, but personally, I don't see him as a closer in my opinion. If Jose Alvarado can throw strikes, he's absolutely nasty. So we'll see what the bullpen can do, but that's going to again be the biggest question mark for the Phillies this season. Moving on to the New York Mets. The Mets could very well win the division, win 100 games, but Mets are going to Met. Like, it's similar to the Angels. Both teams have high expectations every year, and it just doesn't happen. They added Scherzer, they added Starling Marte, they added Bassett, they added Eduardo Escobar, Mark Canha, made a lot of great moves this offseason. I like what they did with the team, but you just don't know, especially with how things have gone for them the past couple seasons. DeGrom can't stay on the field. Everybody loves watching this guy pitch, but he can't stay on the field. So that's frustrating. You have Lindor as your shortstop, but last year he had a rough season. The Mets are not a surefire division winner playoff team, in my opinion. They could very well be that team, but you just never know with the Mets, is what I'm saying. Like I have on there in the graphic, can they live up to the expectations? I think they can, and they probably will this year, because there's a lot more talent on this team. But then again, you never know. So finally, that brings us to the last team, the Atlanta Braves. I have them defending their crown and winning the division again. They had an amazing offseason. Yes, they lost Freddie Freeman, but they picked up a younger, less expensive guy in Matt Olson. Amazing move by their GM. They brought in Kenley Jansen, stole him away from the Dodgers, which I thought was crazy. Supposedly Marcell Ozuna's coming back, which, don't really have high opinions of him, but if he's playing baseball, he's playing baseball. It is what it is. He offers a great bat if he's in the lineup. They brought back Eddie Rosario, Austin Riley, and Ozzie Albies are still there. And then you've got Acuna coming back. Adam Duvall and Dansby Swanson and Travis d'Arnaud are all there. The lineup's pretty solid. And then the rotation, you got Fried, Morton, Ian Anderson, Huascar Ynoa, and some other young guys behind them that are all pretty solid. So the rotation's going to be fine. You added Kenley to a bullpen that already was amazing last year with Will Smith. You added Colin McHugh. You've already got Tyler Matzak and AJ Minter. So the Braves are going to win the division again, and we'll see. Maybe they can go back-to-back. I don't know. It's going to be a tough NL this year. I think the National League, the teams at the top, are going to be in a dogfight. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. So there you have it, guys. This is a long video. I appreciate you if you stuck through the whole thing. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and expect some more content coming from me soon. Mariners Fanatic out.